The Assistant Chief Education Program. This module is on communications. We have said before that communication is the most important skill for a chief. You have to build a team out of the EOs that are assigned to your precinct, and this is not something that happens by accident. It happens when you start well before the election by communicating with them, whether you communicate in person, on the phone, by text, email, on the phone again, by more text, by more email. Whatever methods you use, you have to communicate with your team. And you should have a plan for what you need to communicate, how you're going to do so, when you're going to do it, and to make sure that your communication is two-way, that you actually know people have received your communication if you're sending text messages or emails. It does no good to send 20 preparatory emails to an EO only to find that you didn't have the correct email address for them. You also need to communicate with the registrar's office before, during, and after the election. And not to be overlooked, but communicating with voters is another important thing that chiefs do on election day. Let's go to the basics of communication. Verbal communication offers the advantage of the opportunity for immediate feedback. We have tons of experience doing verbal communication. You look for cues to see whether the person you're communicating with understood what you're saying, or you can hear it back in the tone of their voice if they're talking to you. Written communication is generally one way, unless you ask for acknowledgement. Written communication has the advantage of ensuring that you're consistently communicating everything to everyone, and you can edit what you send before you send it. It has the disadvantage is that you aren't getting that feedback that you otherwise would, and sometimes you'll convey a tone of voice that you don't mean to convey. Something that is often read into written communication, whether it was intended or not. Every precinct needs a communication plan. It doesn't necessarily have to be written down, but there will be sort of an outline of things you need to do in communicating with your EOs. There are 3 phases to this plan, obviously, before the election, during the election, and after the election. And each one of these phases have different objectives. Before the election, you're trying to build your team and make sure that they are ready and get them used to your communication style and who you are if they don't know you. During the election, you're there to support your team. You're keeping them informed, keeping yourself informed, and directing your team in what they're doing. After the election, you want to thank your team. You want to get their opinions. You want to communicate lessons learned. You might be still learning the lessons after the election. And you also want to set the table for the next election, because this is likely going to be your team next time too. The communications with the precinct team should always include the chief and the assistant chief, at least those communications that are before and after the election. If you're sending them by email or text message, always loop in both the chief and the assistants. So communications before the election, the first thing you want to do is find out from the election manager who is on your team. Usually the elections manager will send out a roster email showing you the people that they think are going to be available to work on your team this time. Now, sometimes that is based on what people said at the beginning of the year, and their status may have changed. It falls to the chief to follow up with each member on their roster and make sure that they're really going to be available. It is in your best interest to know whether folks are going to be available. So when you establish communications with your team, introduce yourself, particularly with new members. Tell them why you are reaching out. They will not have gotten a roster from the elections manager. Elections may be the furthest thing from their mind when that first email or voicemail message or text message comes across their screen. Ensure that they get your communication and that you have a good method to communicate with them, whether it's by telegram, Pony Express, phone call, text message, email, whatever it is. Make sure that you've got a way to communicate with each member of the team. And it may be by individual. Usually everyone can be communicated with the same way, but that's not always the case. If the team member is new, get to know them in terms of their election experience and let them know about you in terms of your expectations and how things generally run in your precinct that other team members might just assume. Still on the before election topic, you want to communicate the education schedule to your team. This is one of the things the elections manager will let you know about. When are the various training sessions that are available for all the different kinds of training that might be available before the particular election that you're coming up on. The elections manager will send the schedule to everyone. Your job is to make sure that all of your folks understand what parts of the schedule are pertinent to them. Some classes are optional, only specialists should go to. Sometimes we'll have 3 different sessions that all seem the same, but your particular precinct will go on one of those nights. Not all of your election officials may necessarily remember what the name of their precinct is or the number of their precinct is, so tell them which night they need to go to. Remind folks also a day or two before a class that it is coming and when and where to be. And if there's an opportunity for you to meet with them, particularly if they don't know you, try to give them some clue as to how to find you in the mass of election officials that will be at the training opportunity. I'll be the one wearing the white carnation or, the big bow tie or something like that. If you can connect with your officers of election, particularly the new ones at classes, that can go a long way towards helping to build your team. Make sure your team knows you can answer their questions and that you want to if they have any questions before the election. Also before the election, you want to communicate some of the precinct-specific information to your team, such as the setup schedule before the election and how folks can help. If you need people to come by on the Monday afternoon at 5 o'clock to help move tables, let them know that. Let them know when to arrive on the morning of the election and where to park. If your election officials gobble up all of the best parking right in front of the door, that's not going to be very friendly for the voters. Plus, a lot of people will walk by their cars during the day, and they may get scratches and dings just from that interaction. Where to enter the building. If you're a new officer of election coming to an elementary school that you don't usually vote at, figuring out which of the doors to go in can be a bit of a chore when it's pitch dark outside. So let folks know where to go. And also what the food plan is. Are you bringing your own? Are you going to order something from outside? Are you doing a potluck? Just what are the plans? And will folks have the opportunity to heat things up? Is there a microwave available? Things like that. You should also tell folks what kind of clothing they should and should not wear. On the should list generally are layers. Now, if you have a polling place that you know is typically very hot or typically very cold, you might advise people of that. And in the should not wear category, that would be anything that suggests a partisanship on the part of your officers of election. It's not a good day to wear your Democratic National Convention or your Republican National Convention t-shirt. The other thing you need to remind your folks of is how long the day will be. You're going to get there probably at 5 in the morning and you'll be there until odds are sometime after 8 in the evening. Remind folks how long that day is and what that might mean in terms of how they need to plan. An organizational step that will give some EO specific information is to communicate all the information you can about what they'll be doing during the day. So will they be rotating out of one position and into another? And how often might you do that? What their setup assignment is, that is what they do when they arrive, so they know how to get going right when they arrive and what to start doing. What their first job assignment is going to be after setup, so they can know how to be prepared for that. And what is their closing assignment? So after the polls are closed, what are they responsible for doing? So they know what to do when the polls are closed. There is usually some value in having the same folks who set up something close out that thing. Not always. There may be good reasons not to, but there's a huge advantage, for example, if you put the signs up to take the signs down because you know where they all were and how they were affixed to the wall or where they're stacked up outside. This can save you a lot of time and be very efficient. In the process of communicating job assignments, whether for setup, closing, or initial assignment, it's not uncommon to get some feedback from your EOs about what they want to do or do not want to do. And this feedback can help you build a more effective team. Some EOs can't stand or sit for long periods, making them one-on-one for certain jobs. Some EOs have a hard time doing some jobs. Sometimes this can be sorted on election day with one-on-one education. Sometimes you just have to adjust your assignment schedule so no one is set up to fail. If you have an EO, for example, who tells you that they just can't do the work at the poll pad to log people in, whether they can't see the screen or they can't see the IDs, what have you, listen to them. Don't put them in a situation where they can't succeed. The more feedback you get, the better you can plan. Encouraging feedback can really help. Remind folks immediately before the election when to be there and to call you if they will not be there or will be late. And by immediately, I mean usually the night before or the afternoon before. During the day, oversight and communication is the most important thing a chief does. I can't stress this enough. During the day, oversight and communication is the most important thing a chief does. Often chiefs will get tied up doing other things, but when they're doing those other things, they are not providing the oversight and they're not communicating with the EOs the way they should be. Those doing other things are assignments that assistant chiefs can take off the chief's hands, enabling the chief to stay on top of the big picture. In a slow election, for example, a local primary, the voter volume may allow a chief to do and oversee because there just aren't very many voters in the polling place. But generally, this is not the case. Chiefs and assistant chiefs are the primary point of contact for poll watchers, voters in distress or who are experiencing a problem, EOs who need assistance, the registrar's office, candidates who want to come into your precinct for whatever reason, media if they show up wanting to do some film at 11, and electoral board members when they show up to see how things are going. On the day of the election, one of the first things the chief needs to do is let the registrar's office know when entry has been made to the polling place. Let them know you are there and that the phone number you're calling from is a phone number they can use to get back to you. The chief needs to have contact information for the polling place location staff in case they cannot get in as planned. Who do you call when the door is locked? Who do you call when the power goes out? How do you get a hold of the people who are responsible for the facility where you are? The chief needs to reach out to any EOs who are not at the polling place by 5:15 in the morning to find out where they are. It has happened that EOs have gotten their wake-up call from the chief. It has also happened that EOs have fallen to emergencies of some kind, and the chief first finds out when they try to call them. You need to know this. As poll watchers arrive, the chief needs to process them and ensure they know the poll watcher knows the do's and don'ts, and that they should only communicate with the chief or assistant chief if they have concerns. In setting up the polling place, the chief's table should be set up somewhere where the chief can visually survey the entire polling place. The discipline known as management by walking around definitely applies to the chief and assistants. Being right there lets EOs and voters communicate with you when things are occurring. Go outside from time to see what is happening with campaigners and how things are working with voter parking. Campaigners can be a great communication resource, often willing to alert you when an outside poll voter is having a hard time calling the precinct for assistance. Chiefs and assistants should let each other know whenever they leave the polling place for where they are going and, if appropriate, how long they will be gone. Get over being embarrassed about taking a bathroom break. Your colleagues need to know if you are unavailable. During Election Day, the chief or their designee needs to communicate with the registrar on a number of different topics. There's periodic reconciliation updates, provisional vote questions, movers rule nuance questions, other voter problems, any equipment or supplies issues, statement of results information at the end of the day, and the status if the results are going to be delayed. Say, for example, you have a lot of write-in votes and they're taking a long time to print, and you're beginning to think it's going to be after 8 o'clock before you can call in your statement of results. You call the registrar and just let them know you're a little bit delayed and why. An often overlooked part of communications is after the election. After the election is a good time to solicit feedback from your team on suggestions for improvement. They will just have been working in the precinct. They'll have some ideas, things that will have occurred to them during the day. You'll find you get suggestions that are specific to the individual. I just want to work at the scanner, as well as suggestions that are as broad as a completely new layout from the polling place when someone sees something they think might be better. The folks in the trenches often have a good perspective on what is going on. This is a good time to express your appreciation for the hard work the team exhibited, as well as to highlight any lessons you have learned and might apply to the next election. Celebrating your successes is never out of order. If you notice that your particular precinct had the third or fourth or fifth or 10th most voters come through the door, tell your team what a great job they did getting that number of people through the voting process. It is a good time to remind the EOs also of when the next election is and of your hope to see them then. Election communications are essential to success. As we said at the beginning, this is the most critical skill for chiefs and assistant chiefs to have. There are a lot of points in the process where communication is needed, and having a communication plan helps make sure that you hit all of those points. Communication is always two-sided. What you say or type is not always what the receiver hears or reads. Confirmation and acknowledgement as part of the communication process can improve your communication effectiveness.